Mark Russell. I'm the director of the Under the Radar Festival, or festival director. We're having fun. So this panel is called Just Art. And we have 4 distinguished panelists, and we'll talk about their work, their own work, and the work that's going on in their field. And you will hear about artists working in the Middle East. Oh, you heard the rest? Okay, anyway. About the Middle East, artists working in China, artists exploring the outer reaches of our digital reality, and those on the cutting edge of design and immersive performance. There are movements and changes, some might call them trends, shifts in focus, shifts in freedom. There are moments when a culture finds its voice in the international cultural zeitgeist, like the New York postmodern dance in the 60s and 70s, and the Flemish artists that flourished in the 80s and 90s. Many times we don't recognize these movements. That's for the historians. But as presenters, it's up to us to try to catch those movements or those artists that need that it is their time, to catch them early and introduce them to our audiences. Trends can be trendy. I'm really always was trying to be trendy. They're looking for the exotic, and that's always a trap for presenters. But listen to what these panelists say and follow that to the work that will speak to your community in an authentic way, in an organic way, and think of it as just art. All right, so we have here Ahmed Attar, and he's a... Oh, we'll get there. This is a mess. Excuse me. We're going to take our time here. Slowly. Just put it out. Okay. All right. We'll try this one. Ahmed Attar. Ahmed Attar is an Egyptian independent theater director, playwright, and cultural manager. He founded and manages key independent cultural institutions in Egypt. He established Studio Ahmed Aden, Cairo's oldest rehearsal and training spaces, and my personal favorite, the best named festival other than Under the Radar, is DCAF, Downtown Contemporary Arts Festival, Downtown Cairo Contemporary Arts Festival, for my book. Egypt's largest and annual international contemporary arts festival, Maktabi, Cairo's exclusive shared office spaces for the creative sector, and Arab Arts Focus, a leading producer of Mid-East work. What did I say? All right. And then next to him is Markéta. Hold on a second. I'm taking my time, and I'm mixed up. Fantová. Markéta Fantová, who's the artistic director of the Prague Quadrennial in 1923. Whatever, from 2019 to 2023. Markéta is a performance designer, scenographer, and a team collaborator with extensive artistic team leadership and education programming, building skills. A university educator with 10 years of, oh boy. I am like the panel leader from hell. You know, and this is the last time I'll be here at ISPA, and I'm enjoying it a lot. Yeah, it's good, it's really good. And somehow, you know, I'm gonna just improvise, and I'll let Markéta talk to you. She has, for the last 7 years, run the Prague Quadrennial, which is an amazing event. And she also is an artist. She's working on something new I hope you talk about. And then Mikael Fock is coming to us from Denmark. Thank you very much. And he is working in the he's done festivals, he's done everything, he's a creator. He's working now in the idea of virtual performance, of checking out the edges of digital performance, or what that other world is. Did I completely screw it up? I guess so. All right, and Ophelia Huang, who is going to talk to us about the work coming out of China. And she is also a festival runner, a director, a multi-talented performer and person. And I'm anxious to hear what she's going to talk about what's happening in Shanghai and in China. So why don't we now, I will shut up, and I want, I want Ahmed to start us, if he will. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Can we have the video, please? I usually improvise, but considering that this is the 75th anniversary of ISPA, I thought I would write something down. You know. So I hope it goes well. Well, I numbered my pages.
Oh, that's the
So.
something new every day.
I'm very happy and honored to be here with you at the 75th anniversary of ISPA. And thank you, Mark, for the introduction. No, really. I personally would like to, I identify myself as the artist, but for the sake of our panel today, I will bring out Dr. Jekyll and leave Mr. Hyde in the shadow. So as Mark introduced me, I'm also a producer and a culture operator in Cairo. Most of the work we do is in the performing arts, directed to support artists in Egypt and across the Arab world. The project I'm going to speak about today is the Arab Arts Focus. Some of you might have made it to Cairo or to other places where we've held the focus over the years since 2014 and have an idea about it. So basically, since 2014, we've held 8 editions in Cairo every 2 years, but also in Edinburgh Fringe in 2017. We brought in, I think, 12 shows to Summerhall for the whole month, in Avignon Off in 2018, and in Vitry-sur-Seine in 2021. We present contemporary work by Arab artists. Our definition of an Arab artist is very wide. An Arab artist can be born and raised in the Arab world, can be of Arab descent, living somewhere across the planet. So it's very wide. It's very inclusive also. We mainly work with performing arts, but we basically look for what the artists make, so we can have performances, new technology. I mean, it's very wide. Why did we do that? Because, I mean, there are many reasons why we created the Arab Arts Focus. I have to also manage the, okay, I'm horrible with this stuff. Oh, okay. So, I mean, in order to speak about Arab artists and trends, I think it's very important to put things in context, especially today when putting things in context seems like a distant notion. We somehow look at events as a starting point rather than a moment within a historical space and time continuum that has started many years before. I'm personally very humbled today to be here talking about Arab artists in this particular venue and in this particular location. A place that has witnessed in 2001, a changing moment in the world history, which if described as extremely tragic would not do it justice. But the tragedy of 9/11 extends way beyond the events of 2001, both in time and in geography. I would even say for us it extends until today. And when I say us, I speak about the Arab world. The tragedy of 9/11 has crystallized the stigmatization of an entire part of the world, the Arab world, with its 450 million people, with their diversities and similarities, and often also an entire religion of 1.8 billion people across the world, with their extremely different ethnic, culture, and historical backgrounds. If we want to understand the contemporary Arab artist today, we have to look at what took place in their world since 9/11/2001. Then maybe we can have an idea about their work and trends. Since 9/11, one major invasion that left around 4.5 million people dead in Iraq, 6 revolutions in Tunisia, Egypt, Syria, Yemen, Libya, and Sudan, which after 3 or 4 years has either left countries in civil wars, with 230,000 dead and 6 million displaced in Syria, 340,000 dead and 4.5 million displaced in Yemen, 9,000 dead and 5.4 million displaced in Sudan since April 2023. The countries that were lucky went back to an authoritarian regimes that are worse off than what the revolutions have aimed to topple, and are in such dire economic crisis that people in these countries are reminiscent about, sorry. Okay, I have to also manage the PowerPoint. It's not easy. The old, corrupt, backwards, and ruthless regimes they had fought hard to topple. And those who didn't have a full-fledged revolution have been hit by economic crisis, like Lebanon and Algeria. And the few left are hit by natural disaster. I think you've heard about what happened in Morocco last year and in Libya and so on. Even the gods are not happy with this. Oh my God. And of course, we can't forget the ongoing occupation of Palestine, an Arab-Israeli conflict that is a constant in Arab consciousness for 75 years now. This is the reality of the Arab artists whose pictures of their work are looping behind me. They are either living within politically oppressive, culturally rich but restrictive, socially chaotic environments, or have simply been completely uprooted from their homes, cultures, families, climate, food, and found themselves in strange cultures where they have to start from scratch. It is a real struggle and often dangerous fight to create in the Arab world or to be an Arab artist. If you are in one of the so-called stable countries and want to express yourself freely, you are most probably watched, censored, and taking into consideration so many red lines while you create that usually artists don't have to bother about when they're creating elsewhere. And if you're displaced into another country and have to start from scratch, you're struggling with your desire to be who you are and the need to become part of this new entity that is mostly strange to you. If you are an Arab artist, you are struggling with your heritage that you respect, admire, and cherish dearly, and with your desire to break these imposed barriers that have been developed within that same heritage, that same cherished culture. You are torn between Dr. Jekyll, I'm using that metaphor today, as you've noticed, who loves his heritage, and Mr. Hyde, who wants to smash it to pieces and be done with it once and for all. You're struggling between traditional forms that are part of you since you were a child and contemporary forms that are equally a part of you, between the need to overtly political and social work with the risk of losing the finesse and subtlety of the artistic practice you're in, and between the desire and luxury to abstract and to do art for art's sake. Finally, you're struggling with your big dreams and big productions, and your very little means. This is why, fellow Ispians, if I might say, I and my colleagues, or my colleagues and I at the Arab Arts Focus, have the greatest admiration for the Arab artists and the work they do, whether they be in Cairo, Marrakesh, Beirut, or Ramallah, Abu Dhabi, whether they were born and raised in the suburbs of Paris or the boroughs of New York, or have moved to Athens or Stockholm just a few years ago. They're all fighting hard to create their work, fighting against themselves, their heritage, their societies, and most of all, the stigmatization that the entire world has forced upon them since the beginning of the century. If we want to speak about trends, well, the Arab world is, I speak of it as if it's one thing, but it's a very diverse entities, and that's the beauty of it. Arab artists are doing contemporary dance, traditional dance, contemporary theater. Well, theater is not that good, but you know. Music, I mean, they're so diverse in the topics they talk about, in how they approach these topics. It mostly depends where they are based and how they're dealing with all the constraints and surrounding them. What I can say, my humble advice to you is, if you want to really know about the trends in the Arab world and engage with the Arab artists, then please take some time to know about them as individuals and about their culture and their reality. Because in spite of all this, they are, in my opinion, the past. They carry the past, they make the present, and they pave the way for the future. I need to run through the PowerPoint before I get to my last part. Okay. All right. Great. And now, before I leave you, my Mr. Hyde is nagging on me to show you the trailer of, no, actually, no, I messed up. Can we please show the trailer of the Arab Focus, the next one? I have 1 minute to go. I'm sorry. So I'd like to show you a trailer of my latest work, The Discrete Charm of the Pillars of Society, which I've written and directed at Dramaten in Stockholm. It premiered end of January, March 20, in 23, and ran for about 30 performances between January and March before we presented in Cairo at DCAF last November. It's a play about love, filthy rich Swedes and Arabs, bigotry, COVID, and vaccine trafficking, formatted as a modern TV novella in Arabic, English, Swedish, in 3 acts, 45 scenes, and 1 hour and 22 minutes. It's funny without being stupid, and it's available for touring. We should be at MC93 in Paris sometime early 25. So as soon as the dates are out, I'll send them around. And I told you, that's my Mr. Hyde, promoting myself, like that. And we'll wait for you in 25 in Cairo for the Arab Arts Focus. Thank you.
Thank you. His Dr. Hyde isn't bad. I've been watching your work since Mubarak. Ophelia, would you grace us? Thank you.
Thank you. I feel I need to take a deep breath after what Ahmed said. I come from, I live in Shanghai, I come from China, and it's not a monolith, I have to say, that if you ever lived there, or even better, if you speak the language, you know that actually behind this very strong image of only one voice coming out of the country from the official channels, actually there are multiple voices and multiple realities there, pretty much depending on your distance with the power and authority. And as many people in my region, in Asia or Southeast Asia especially, I wear multiple hats, and I do have an institutional capacity where I work for a public theater under the city of Shanghai, and my role there is mainly programming, curating, but I also have an independent practice as an artist and also as a dramaturg that working with a lot of independent artists, Asian artists, but especially a lot of the Chinese or Chinese diasporic artists. And that's where I want to speak about their work today, especially in this occasion, given the theme of the conference is about bridging the gap. And I feel that what's happening in my country is increasingly in this year, there's a huge concentration of resources and channels and narratives into one channel, which is the authoritative, the governmental channel. And a lot of the artists in the independent scene are pushed into a marginal position where they don't have any resources to connect internationally, to travel and to collaborate. And that's why I feel like instead of talking about my work, I really want to lend my voice to them and let them speak about their project. So that's where I come to start. And I also want to mention that because in this kind of a situation, a lot of the artists in the independent scene are really founding themselves on their artistic practice. So actually, for them, a very big question is that why do I want to make art if there is no funding? And what do I want to say in response to the society and people around us and all the changes that's happening in our life? And that's why I think that's also super interesting for today's topic, the talking about trends or what's happening. So first I want to talk about, this is a dance artist, Gujani, and she's based in Beijing. She's a dancer, choreographer, and dance is a very active art form in China these years, particularly because of the relationship with language for Chinese artists is getting very interesting and complicated, and there's a distrust of language because of the censorship issue. And so actually a lot of the artists are going between this art form of dance and theater and performances, and a lot of interesting work in dance happening. So Gujani is definitely one that I would recommend you to pay attention to. And she has this particular language, very dramatic, and about the tension between the relationship between people, space. And this is her work called Transition, which is co-produced by Shanghai International Dance Center, as well as West Kowloon in Hong Kong. You can find about the trailers of her work. There's no time to play that, but it's really, really beautiful. It's on their website. And she's making a new work, also talking about thinking about after all that happened during the pandemic and all the lockdown, all the protests in China, that what drives people, what drives an artist to make work in this kind of a situation. And instead of using very dramatic, very strong body language, she's going to do everything in a very, very slow pace in her new work, which is going to be premiered this year. The next one I want to talk about, this is our ING. It's a all-female, super young collective, multidisciplinary. They do a lot of performances in different kind of spaces, public spaces instead of theater. And, what you saw in the picture is actually a truck. That's it's a drag show that they producing. At the beginning was in a bookshop or like some private spaces in Shanghai. It's a kind of nomad performances going on, but they got invited by a big festival, major festival with a lot of money. But they said, "Oh yeah, you young artists, we don't have money, we don't have fee. We consider this an opportunity for you. So could you come?" And they say, "Fuck you," but we are going to. But we're going, why not? But we're going to crowdfunding a performance track, and then they transform this track into their stage, and they performed all the way from Shanghai to the festival, which is in North China. And then they have a lot of encounters and also perform for the audience who have never seen this kind of show before in China. And they did recently in 2021, actually a theater piece called Rest in Peace, Papa. And this is actually the first show that is for a stage by the group. And it's talking about care. And it's about, because China is increasingly a very fast aging society. And even as a young member of the society, that they or us, every day we need to question who is going to take care of us. If we cannot count on the government, if we cannot count anymore on the traditional family structure. So where this care come from, and how do we see death? How do we see these connections between generations? So this piece is a semi-documentary, semi-verbatim theater, and performed by the members together as an ensemble. So talking about care, this Liquid Dependency is a participatory performative game also about care. And game is increasingly becoming a kind of a format a lot of the artists are thinking a lot and using, because I think this engagement with the public and for the members of public to be able to be part of the project rather than just being the audience of a project is very important in China nowadays. And so this game is basically is a very small group of audience member, and then you need to at the beginning of the performance, you need to draw a card, and you got a random character there with a different distribution of like money, house, different situation. But basically, the goal of the game is you need to go through all these challenges and crises in life as we experience, but with a much faster speed, of course, as part of the game. And you need to survive through this, through building up relationship with other members of the audience or other players in this game. So it becomes like a rehearsal for future in many occasions. And that's why we say this is the meaning of performance. It's a rehearsal for future. And we want to, through this game, we want to imagine what kind of a future we can build, which is not built by a money currency, but also is a currency of care. And this actually this game is based on a massive amount of theoretical research. So this is the model of the theoretical framework behind this game, and also the currency. How can we build the society based on a currency of care? I'm not going into details of that, but you can see a little bit of how it works. It's very simple. You just need a space, and actually, since earlier in the conference we're talking about sustainable touring, this project is very minimum travel because the members of the creative team is in 3 continents, and then they just need to travel to train the locals. It's all run by the local people and designed to be like advocates for something that can be running for a long time in the local community, because it's meant for them, not as a piece of art, but something for to be grown and cultivated locally, and local people taking initiative. Yeah, so this is a kind of a setting that's for liquid dependency. And maybe before I talk about this, I can please, can we have a video, please?
Chinese.
黑头发黄皮肤吗？
Round table 中文嘛，
说华语。He's Chinese, racially Chinese, but he don't speak Chinese at all. His family don't speak Chinese at all.
Chinese 不是有中国人吗？
《三国演义》
潘钱吗？
这个问题有点难。
那你为什么你会觉得华人这个概念会比中国人这个概念要好
？Physically, genetically, and nationally is different.
我觉得中华民族这个东西本身是不存在的。
人是有多重角色。
Yeah, this is just a very short trailer, behind it is a massive research archive by the artists Xiao Ke and Zihan, based in Shanghai. And this is a part of the project called China, which they started in 2018. That out of a lot of the confusions and the struggles when they have to work internationally in a different language than their native one, and also this confusion of what it means to be Chinese or Chinese artists, but recently, interestingly, that they also found out with a lot of the nationalism coming out from our country and happening in our life, and this getting stronger official narratives or the single right narratives about identity. This is precisely what they want to say about, well, what if we could have different voices. And so China, they have been different format, like as a video installation and photo exhibition, as well as performance lecture, and it is ongoing. They're still working on it to create a performance for stage with members of the public that can participate, which, yeah, this is a picture of the performance lecture that they did previously in multiple cities around the world. And yeah, so I'm conscious of time, and I want to end my presentation with this project that is a collaboration project that I'm involved in creatively, and is with the artists in Germany. But we want to talk about why we work internationally. And then nowadays, increasingly in this world with a lot of isolation, a lot of challenges for how can we exist together. So we use this Mars exploration as a starting point to imagine a future that what about the challenges of having all these differences, but also not only that, but also how can we celebrate all the similarities and being inspired by each other, which is precisely that why I'm here today and why we work internationally and work collectively. So this is a new project which will be premiered in 2025. Yeah, it's a theater piece. So I will end here, yeah, too.
Thank you.
Back to Mark.
Thank you, Ophelia. That was amazing. Mikael, will you help us here? No? Okay.
Yes.
It's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation and for being here. It's really an honor. I'm going to talk about the technology and the challenges that we have with technologies and theater. I started out as a director and developer like more than 20 years ago, where we were starting to do digital theater. And digital theater back 20 years ago was like there were 2 or 3 HD cameras in the world. One was in Japan, one was in Germany, and the other one was in the US. So now we have, we have all HD cameras in our pockets. So this technological, it's really storming ahead of us, this technological development. So for the last 12 years, I was also the director of the Culture Yard in just north of Copenhagen, a big cultural institution, which gave me the possibility to ask a lot of very good people to work with digital art. So we created a space, we called it the 40 Box, where we could actually do digital experiments, while we were also having a festival called the Click Festival, where we were kind of inviting people to show prototypes from all over the world. And the whole idea about this festival was to, you could say, give back technology to the artists. So a lot of, a lot of the problems that we are seeing today with young people and social media and people being lonely, and they're all coming from, a lot of them are coming from the way we are using the social media and how the algorithms are working in a place where we cannot see them. And so we want to say we are, in a way, we are occupied by these technologies, but we also want to give the society the possibility to understand these technologies in a new way by giving them to the artists so that they can work with this. And I'm saying this also because in theater we have a fear of new technologies, and especially now where we have a lot of AI coming into the theaters, into the laboratories. And theater, technology is not anymore just like a new lamp. Technologies are intelligent and they are challenging us in many ways. And we are using them, of course, in theaters with lamps and projection technologies, and a lot of things are run by intelligent things. But we also wanted to do a performance that would take it into the narrative, into the core, into the DNA of this discussion. So we started in the 40 Box to work 5 years ago with a project called Shadow, and I'm going to show you a bit from that in a moment. And this was an experiment because we were very interested in artificial intelligence. And 5 years ago, nobody believed in artificial intelligence. It was just like a gimmick. Stupid thing, they were stupid, they couldn't talk, they couldn't do anything. But we started to train this GPT-2 model, which was one of the first ones. And we worked with writers, authors, dramaturgs and you had to curate what these AIs were generating, because a lot of it was just like stupid things they were saying. But sometimes you would find things and you could use it. But we wanted to go a little further, and luckily for us, in a way, you could say that the corona came, so we were actually put into this box, 5 people. We were allowed to be 5 people at the time in Denmark under corona. So we stayed together to do this performative work, Shadow, where we would like to see if it was possible to see if it was possible for a machine to become human, and to see if you could make a performance where you would have an AI as a protagonist performing on the stage with an actor and together with the audience. And that was a big work. So we started to train on billions of data set. And we very soon found out that it was not data like facts that it would need, but we would like to train it on empathy and human feelings. So because this performance should be about this unacknowledged trade that's going on all the time in our pockets between us, human beings, wanting to have relations and to find love through these social media and a lot of these platforms, and then the computers, the algorithms need of data that they're harvesting from us all the time. And so we worked on that, and then suddenly the GPT-3 model came, and then things started to go fast. And then we started to be able to, on large language models, we could train it. And now we are having a performance where the AI is, as a protagonist, is improvising through at least 70% of the performance. It's also running, it has a visual representation of itself. And this visual representation is growing through the performance while it's harvesting information and data from this person, this actor on the stage. And also from the audience, which has, because we're entering a game with the audience, and they approach this AI through the game. So there's exchange going on all the time between the AI and the human beings. And the human beings want to find love and to find friends and to find out why it's alone. And the AI just want to become human, more human than the humans. And so this is the dramaturgy, you could say, in this performance. It's in a 40 box, so it's what you see is like, well, it should be in 3D, you should have glasses on, and then you would have this feeling of the AI, this visual representation being on the stage together with you. Yeah, let's see the 4 minutes.
We are putting up a big reflection foil, and we have projections on the floor, and we have stereoscopic pictures, and we have Kinects and lots of things. So there's a lot of things to do before we are ready to do the performance.
We use stereoscopic 3D projection, a passive system that requires 2 projectors. This means that the audience are wearing 3D glasses like in the cinema. We use a depth sensor to track the performer on the stage. The tracking is calibrated with the physical space and with the illusion so that we can draw graphics in relation to the body. As far as we know, this format is quite unique worldwide. We can create things like a scanning effect on the body using the third projector, while we at the same time use the Pepper's Ghost to draw around the body.
To create the distinctive AI character, we have been working with the transfer learning GPT models to make it kind of like both understand if it's kind of like a more psychological AI persona it has to take on, or if it's a more kind of like I'm an AI and I harvest data.
Here you see a human, a perfect human. A perfect human that feels imperfect because it's missing something. Here you see the imperfect machine. It's missing something to understand the human. It doesn't yet know what it's missing.
In the different scenes, we are trying to detect different things. Like, for example, we have a scene where the AI has to harvest the face to see if there are emotions in the face, and then in that scene we would have to train the AI in specific data sets about that, facial recognition, face scanning, etc. And we would also have a scene where we would look for feelings through memories, because feelings are something that are connected to memories.
Accessing photo album. Processing photo album.
An AI doesn't have really a memory, or it has the whole internet, which is a kind of memory, but it's not linear.
What's happening? We're entering the photographs.
It's not like having a timeline like the humans being have. So there was a lot of philosophical, technical questions about how to train it, and what should it say, what kind of data set would we train it on. And that became you could say that became the kind of the beat through the performance from scene to scene. Every scene would be an experiment until we would reach the point where the actor should take a decision if she really wanted to go from this real world into the metaverse, you could say.
What do you want to do with my memories?
I want to use your memories to create a new identity.
What kind of memories do you need from me?
I need to harvest a memory from you where you felt a strong emotion.
Just the last thing, I would say that for us, it's really been fantastic to work in this media. It takes so long time to do it. You can't imagine. And it's only because I had my own institution that I could use and to go together with under like an umbrella of EU, Creative Europe, and the Danish Art Foundation that it was possible to make this project over 5 years. I don't know any institution that has this possibility, because we all fixed in very, very closed patterns. So developing these things, you have to have new ways of producing. I think there's also another point here, that is that if we want, I mean, these kind of stories that emerge with new technologies are also the stories of a new generation. And we have to put them into the stage. And if we want to tell these stories about social media and loneliness and how to go into the metaverse and talk into the narrative of gaming and things like that, then we have to acknowledge that new technologies are not something that we should be afraid of, but we should really caress it. last but least, maybe I can say that the title Shadow is inspired by Hans Christian Andersen, the Danish fairy tale storyteller who wrote this beautiful, sinister, dark fairy tale called Shadow about this young student sitting in hot Rome, sweating over his studies, and then on the opposite side of the street, you have this balcony, and you have, and he calls it the magic chamber of poetry. And there are chandeliers and music, and there's this curtain, and in the night he sees a woman behind it, and he steps onto his own balcony, and he has a candle behind him, and then his shadow is cast on the other wall, and he asks the shadow to, why don't you kind of go a little around this woman and maybe behind the curtain to see what's going on into this magic chamber of poetry and romance. And the shadow does, because the young man doesn't have the gut to ask her to go for a drink. So he passes, the shadow passes behind, and next day he doesn't have a shadow anymore. And many, many years later, this shadow comes back, and it's a powerful man. And he has sneaked under all the doors, and he has slept with presidents and princesses and whatever you have. And then he wants to be the master. And then the human being, the scholar who's now a professor, can be his shadow. And this is, I think, so wisely thought of Hans Christian Andersen that we should never let the AIs and the technologies do the work for us. Don't let them go into the magic chamber of poetry. We have to do it ourselves as human beings. We can use them as tools, but we have to go into the magic chamber of poetry ourselves.
Thank you so much, Michael. Markéta, take us home.
Well, I too am very honored to be here at ISPA and also in this wonderful, beautiful space. And space is what I would like to talk about because by trade, I am a designer for theater or for performance. And in Europe, there's quite often used word scenography. And in past 8 years, since 2016, I had the honor and also a huge responsibility to essentially design a framework for a festival and a platform called Prague Quadrennial. Prague Quadrennial of performance space and performance design. It is essentially a platform that runs throughout, but every 4 years it organizes this really large festival that has about 70,000 visitors and about 100 artists from about 100 countries that come in. The center of it all are exhibitions of performance design. And I don't know how many of you are thinking about or thought about or have some sort of a description of what scenic or performance design overall in holistic way is, but we had to really sit down and think about how do we describe it nowadays? What is the current trend, if we use that word? Like, how do we describe it? And we had to define it for ourselves before we started 2023 edition of PQ because we wanted people who were coming in to know what to expect. And so this is what we came up with. We realized that scenography and performance design is an ecosystem or an environment that is devised by a team of creators. So it is everything that is surrounding you during the performance. This ecosystem is fully immersive, because we are all in it, tangible, multi-sensorial, it's not just visual, inspiring, emotionally charged, because it is about exchange of emotions, and it is non-linear, and its most dynamic particles are performers and the audience. And it is in constant change and constant flux, so nothing ever stops. So when you think about it that way, it opens up a door to so many different possibilities as to what can be scenography, what can we actually invite into the festival, what can happen. And indeed, It's not that we are driving or curating. Our team and creating a framework for this, we are curating only part of the festival, but the other part really comes from these 100 different countries. So in a way, we're capturing something that is happening and we're looking at the trends. But for instance, my job and the huge responsibility I had was to create an environment in which new trends can also germinate. Because people come in, they do work, there are theorists, there are people who write about it, and they also come up with a new language, a new way how to talk about this whole profession. And to start the process, first comes really the space. In our world of scenography, that's how I think the whole festival is conceived. We have to find a space of 10,000 square meters. It's really huge. Finding it in historical Prague is really a challenge. This is also a theater space from the exhibition of theater space, the Drifting Room from Australia, which is a moving theater and a performance. And I worked on 2 editions in 2020, for 2020 and 2023. The first space, we realized that what festivals like that really need is a meeting space, because why do we do festivals? Why do we work with so many people from so many countries? The real goal of giving people inspiration is to actually bring them together, so we need a central space. Our location was an industrial palace in Prague, which is a beautiful building, except its left wing went down in a fire. And we used the leftovers of that large space to show that actually performing arts, scenography, can save certain parts of the cities. This is also part of the mission of PQ, to generate enough interest to bring people into areas that do need some attention. And as scenographers, we can change spaces. And so that's what we had done for 10 days here. The other space for PQ 2023, we were preparing the festival during the pandemics, which was really very difficult. We didn't know if people will be coming, what will happen, how we can get through it. The communication with artists from 100 countries, you can only imagine how many Zooms we went through. But also finding a space that was somehow really fitting for the situation the world found itself in, with the politics, all kinds of conflicts and everything. All of that is part of the new trends and new developments. We decided to use a former city slaughterhouse, which also served as a city market later on, which is an enclosed area. You can imagine what slaughterhouse was designed like and what it was designed for. There are layers and layers of history. Part of it is also a very sad communist history that runs through these spaces. And it was also under or in danger of a very quick gentrification. So we're also trying to save or show that the communities surrounding this area, and this is the only place where hipsters and elderly people meet regularly, that there is something to the space that's worth saving. So what we didn't know is that it was really in flux. A lot of things were changing during our festival. And then once the spaces are chosen, the structural work of the festival really starts, because the space oftentimes informs the projects that we come up with. And the nature of the spaces, like for instance here you have a giant open space where we decided to do a project called Formations that put together architect and choreographer as curators, and then they curated pieces where the architecture and choreography intersected. And these are some of the pictures from those works. We also decided to change because historically, Prague Quadrennial is running since 1968. By the way, it was just a year after Russian invasion of Czech Republic. So very difficult to even start the whole project. And traditionally, part of the exhibitions was an exhibition of performance space. At that time, it was called of theater architecture. And it was an exhibition of models and plans and new ideas for new theater spaces. We have changed that in 2019. We decided that we need to open up to the whole world. And the whole world is not necessarily using spaces done by architects. We don't need to see only architectural new buildings, but we needed to see spaces that are working and are used for performances traditionally in Africa, in South America, in many different countries or places through Brazil, Chile. We had so many different countries participating that we had to open up this exhibition and show what's out there in the world. And the first edition in 2019 was a little difficult, but in 2023, it not only just completely flourished, and we had so many different countries showing such incredible, ecological, amazing, and really simple but beautiful spaces that we will definitely keep that direction. But we also ended up growing a branch that was dealing with ecology. How do we create ecological spaces for performances? And just to say, even though we are here in this beautiful theater, everything in the world of scenography is site-specific. Even theater is site-specific. It's got its emotions, it brings you into a certain world, and you have to work with it. The dramaturgy for the audience may change, even in this space. So in order to place all the pieces that were coming to us from around the world, as a team, we worked extremely hard to find the right locations for every single piece. And a lot of it is also an intersection of cultural collaboration, because some pieces do not want to be inside. Some pieces are very political. Some pieces are funny, and they're going through a city, and they need to have a route where tourists or really strange situations happen, like here, wedding, and these funny fishes coming together. So a lot of work goes into the preparation of finding the right environment, including this one where you need safety, obviously. You need all kinds of things that go behind that. It's a vertical dance from Fock project from Hungary, and they're very easygoing artists and amazing artists. And sometimes it's as simple as giving creators an opportunity to create something that is so site-specific that it takes people through streets of Prague, and they focus on such a detail as this. These were tattoos that were given to people who were walking through the city, and they were supposed to find the right locations that would match. This piece was incredibly political. It was about, well, the name itself is really telling you Nuevo Zoológico Mexicano. It's really about cultural appropriation situation. And talking to the artists, we realized that we need to place it in a gallery. We placed it in the National Gallery in Prague, in the space that really is putting the performer on the spot and is creating an interesting relationship with the audience. And it was a durational performance, so it took an incredibly long time. National Gallery is not used to durational performances. They don't particularly love this kind of approach. They would love to have original art, and Prague Quadrennial is based on 80% of original pieces, so we also carry a huge risk. But try to bring it into a National Gallery. That's an interesting story. So here you can see that this view was particularly also important for this particular piece. The building is a bit like a square Guggenheim, so it has these many white stories going up. And another challenge, and a very important one, was to not give up and really make sure that when we invite artists from countries that are hard to reach, and we had many participating, that we don't give up on visas, we keep going, we keep working with these artists, we keep asking them what they need, we find the right spaces for them outside, including the time of the day when the performance needs to happen, including the weather, the smell they required, the cut grass, non-cut grass, all those kinds of things. And we learned that, yes, one can invite African artists who live in London, one can invite artists from India who are living in Germany. We didn't want that. We really wanted to bring the artists from their countries. And sometimes they received their visas day before they flew in, which I heard was your situation. It takes extreme patience, but we need to have it if we want to open the door. This is a beautiful piece. I am here by an Israeli choreographer, Galit Liz, and we also wanted to open the door to diversity that included not only different countries, but also different ages. And Galit Liz is working with women over 60 years old, and she has created a professional dance company with those women. She takes their stories and puts them on stage. These were partly Israeli dancers, but also Czech women who were coming from or growing up and living during the communist era, probably standing, in the kitchen most of their lives, and she have moved them onto a stage and created a piece that really made most of the audience cry. And to say something about the teamwork, very important part of PQ, we focus on teamwork, we focus on teams, we don't focus on stars, or definitely not in 2019 or 2023, because we decided that the world is changing. And nobody works in silos anymore. Everything is really very multidisciplinary. And based on your presentation, it's very clear that the way how the theater teams are changing is very dynamic and different, and we have to open a space for that as well. Because all of a sudden we have creative coders, we have psychologists, we have people from many different walks of life working on our performances. And if we keep our rigid structures, we will lose something and stay behind. Also, a very important part of PQ is giving a space to young people, young creators who are very fragile in the beginning of their careers. So we have a lot of opportunities for them to come and show their work, and we pledged to give them as much care as possible. Because their work is really visceral, inspiring, fragile, and needs care. And this is where the most of the inspiration came from. We have moved student exhibition outside to the elements, so we also work with the world and the environment and the weather, and they had to come up with things that worked within that, and they were absolutely brilliant. Sometimes also keeping old ideas, but giving them new framework, because originally scenography was exhibited through models. So we have created a big exhibition when we took them out of context and used them as objects alone. And this National Gallery loved, because they were objects, they didn't bite and they didn't move. So they're very happy about that, and it brought a lot of attention. And now I'll finish with emerging technologies. I have created, each artistic director has a freedom to create their own signature project, and mine was 36Q, which was a project dedicated to emerging technologies. And we had lots of students participate in that, and lots of young people participate in these workshops. And the idea was to create an immersive environment that would bring together as many technologies as possible and create a living and breathing world that was driven by technologies. We had 99 different students participating in this. It took a year. And the whole purpose was the workshop, not the result. But as you can see, there was 7 artists, including 2 curators, which was me and Jan Rolnik. We had created the big framework, found a big space, and worked with the artists and students for about half a year. So we had an AR stations, VR stations, light, sound, and all of it was connected through creative coding. And I do agree with you that technologies are tools, and they're artistic tools. They just really expand our palette. We should not be afraid of them, but we should always know why we're doing it and what we're doing. So we should always have a direction. And so this is now, I have switched over from the artistic director work, very smoothly walked over through this project into my new job, and I'm working for Robe Lighting, and I'm bridging the industry and art by establishing international education program for lighting design in different countries, and some of them are really hard to reach countries. So that is my new job, and that's what I'll continue, and I'll stay still probably connected with PQ, I'm sure, into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Let's thank the panel. What an amazing presentations. So we're running out a little bit of time because I wanted to get to some questions, but I was wondering what the extent you feel that these projects, these things you're talking about, are trends, or are they driven from a region? Are they coming from, or more of a global picture? Does that make sense? It's a sort of a global sensibility. Are they coming out of that, or is it coming from, in certain places, certain communities?
I think it's coming out from a global trend, for example, that people feel more disconnected, and that's why that's this kind of a sense of where can we find this connection between my arts or my artistic practice and the society, or me as an artist with my audience member. Even in some cases that they are even, I mean, in China, they want to jump over the role of institution, and they're really directly engaging with the artist without mediation of the institution by using new forms of performances and new forms of producing models as well. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else wants to?
I think there's a big trend creating communities right now. I think there's a widespread of different trends, like technology, like there's an uprise in parts of the universe, of the world. There's a climate problem, a very big one. There's a lot of problems. I was watching the most crazy theater last night. There was a presidential debate between DeSantis and what's her name?
Don't mention it. Yeah.
We don't, Riley. Yeah, it's that was crazy, really. So I said, wow, if this is reality, then theater has a problem. But it's a show also. So I think, but I think also that all what we have been talking about here is about community, creating community. There's such a big need to do that. Also, when we are doing digital art in theaters, it's because we want to get people out of the goggles. Yes. And we want to get them out of their gaming situation at home and into the theaters, and being still, of course, we have glasses on, but you can look through them and you can feel your neighbor and you can see on the stage, and it's with live people. So we need to, I mean, all these trends have something to do with being together.
You're coming from a community. You've been talking about a whole region.
Yeah, I think that I don't like the word trends.
Good.
You know, the word trend is like, it's trendy.
It's a trendy word.
Yeah, and trendy is I don't know. Trendy for me is just a passing thing. It's like like it's a trendy coat or a trendy pair of boots, but I think like for example, I totally what Ophelia said about dance being a medium that artists in China are prone to identify with, because it frees them from the language and the censorship. That's exactly what's happening in the Arab world. Dance is very strong with Arab artists because it does free them from that culture of verb. We are the culture of word, and it puts them face to a lot of the problematics of their heritage, which is the body and relation to the body, whether it's male or female. But there is this very complex thing. So there are definitely roots within the community, but at the same time, we live in an age where a lot of barriers have been, of communication and of technology have been, broken down. Not all the barriers, but some of them, and that kind of connects the world in a different way, So maybe this is the global part. There is always a global part, and there is a very community-related issues. So it's a combination of both. It's not.
Do you feel it's easier in both your cultures to escape the censorship by by these leaning on dance a bit more? Are they having an easier time, or is, are the theater people having to have their scripts vetted, etc.?
I don't know about China, but in Egypt, for example, at the end of the day, there is a lady or a man from the censorship who's going to come and watch the general rehearsal before the audience before the audience sees it. And so they could have read the script, but they have to see the show. And if they see the show and they have an objection on it, and this objection, it's not just verbal, but it's also visual, they will stop it or say, you have to take this out. So, yeah. So
okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's just only for escaping, or because actually still the dance would also be subject to the same system. But I think probably for artists working with words, that they need to make even more efforts, like trying to how to play this game, because if it's all about like the control of the language, of course as a creatively it's also super interesting to observe that, and then you can transfer that into something, a creative inspiration even. But in everyday practical situation, yes, it's probably you need to make more efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think, it's a longer conversation, maybe more, but AI, at the moment, many governments are trying to find ways to limit its power, and you must be watching that as well, in case it begins to interfere with your artistic practices.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of problems with that, I would say, and the biggest problem is actually that they are not controlling anything. And they are these AIs that are hidden in our pockets, that are these shadows that we are going around with. They have algorithms that we can't imagine. I had a scraping of my own Facebook profile just for fun. It took me 3 weeks to get them out of Meta, and you can't imagine how much they knew about me. It's incredible, and I'm not even a very big user of social media, not compared with my daughters, for example. So we need to, in Europe, there's a big trend now going into the parliament, the EU parliament, to try to establish some kind of rules about these things. Mm-hmm. But until we are able to open the Pandora box, to open the box into these dark algorithms, we are not in control of anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Markéta, do you have any?
Yeah, I'm just
where do you think? Yeah.
Listening to this scary story of opening Pandora box, and I'm just imagining, how hard that would be. But in terms of, let's call it currents rather than trends, something that's carrying us forward. Mm-hmm. I think what I had been watching a lot is the work with public space lately. So much theater happens in public space, and a lot of it is also political. So COVID even sort of kicked that forward by all of a sudden pushing us out of theater spaces, because we were sitting in the theater space with a virus. All of a sudden it has invaded our seats and places, and we had to go out. So the rediscovery of various different public spaces and public work, and then shifting that also in terms of working differently with the audiences, one-to-one sometimes, is really interesting, that it doesn't have to be 50 or 60 or however many, but all of a sudden there are these very individual performances.
Redefining the mode. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's have some questions from the audience. Thanks for waiting.
It's a terrific session, 4 wonderful presentations. A question for Ahmed. I noticed that almost all the productions you cited were co-productions with countries outside the Arab world, a lot of them in Europe. And I just wondered, was that a selection you made for this conference? Or is that a kind of general truth about the Arab world, that a lot of work is made in co-productions with countries outside the Arab world?
Well, this was the selection we made for the last edition, November 2023, a few months ago. And basically, we're like farmers. We have a crop, and every 2 years it's a different crop. Sometimes there are oranges and mangoes and apples, and sometimes there are cucumbers and watermelons. And so this year there were a lot of co-productions. But I think because some of the artists either were living in Europe, have moved, been displaced, and they picked up their career there, or because of the need for additional production support from outside of the Arab world. I would imagine that this is part of what I was talking about. This is the kind of reality now that a lot of artists have been displaced, and a lot of them in Europe. So sometimes it's a German production, but we consider that the artist, if the artist is Syrian living in Germany, and it's produced by a German theater, it's a Syrian-German production. So sometimes the Arab country, it's just the identity of the director or of the choreographer, and not necessarily an actual co-production entity.
Great. Yeah, I'm really thrilled with this session. I'm a new member, and I like so much this title, Just Art, and you can read it in different ways. And is there sort of a momentum where it becomes not just art, but actually just art, in the sense of finding justice in our society by the means of artistic practices? And is this actually something which is a change which is happening, a real transformation, and not a cislation, which is so needed, and which maybe might give us some little hope in these very dire times? How do you see this?
Thank you. Did everyone hear the question right? I think it's hard for me to translate, but do you want to respond to do you think these are trends?
I would just say, let's hope that's a current that is happening. Let's really hope and participate in it. I would definitely consider it something to participate in, and have always tried, and hopefully most of us do.
There's a big need for it, I would say. But I think also that there is a tendency to go towards more just art, and I see it also. I think it's one of the tendencies after Corona also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In some ways, I feel like it's personal for each of these artists. They have to say what they want to get their message out, and so it always comes down to just art in a certain way. Maybe that's too simple, but it's just, that is what I'm looking for when I'm looking for work, etc. I'm looking for someone who's giving an authentic reflection of where they're at, that resonates with me, myself. But these are really difficult times. It's hard to make work. There's not a lot of resources, and sometimes not a lot of audiences. So it's a struggling time, but I hope, and I just believe that the art will come through, currents or not.
I think that we speak. I mean, I spoke about the Arab world, and we're talking about different parts of the world. But at the end of the day, when you go into a performance or an exhibition, and the best moment is when you watch something. And although it's in a different language, it's subtitled or not, in different visuals, different everything, it speaks to you to the point that you forget where is this from. That you just, that becomes like the background, that becomes far away. You don't anymore think, oh, this is a Bulgarian artist, or this is a Syrian artist. This is a good work that I enjoyed, and it talked to me, spoke to me, on a deep level. That's just art.
Yeah. Another question, please.
Hello, I'm Nelson from Singapore. This is for Ahmed. Hello, Ahmed. Thanks for your sharing. While listening to your sharing, I was reminded that, and I always usually forget, that my theatre company, 9 Years Theatre, is situated in an area in Singapore that is called the Arab Street area. So besides Chinatown and Little India, we do have an area called the Arab Street area and a famous street called Arab Street, full of food and colorful things to see. And also, one of the most famous restaurants in Singapore was situated in a historical building called the Alcaf Mansion, built by a powerful Arab family. And also, I live in an area in Singapore that is called Al Junid. I know I'm butchering the pronunciation, but Arab names. So in a way, I'm thinking we have so much Arab history, and I just Googled. The Arabs was one of the earliest immigrants to Singapore since the mid-18th century, in a way. So I know this sounds like a pitch. It's not a comment, it's a pitch that I would like to invite you to sort of explore or take interest in collaborative opportunities in Singapore, but also on a larger extent, the Southeast Asian countries, which I am sure has a lot of Arab footprints in their history. Also because, more importantly, I'm very aware that Southeast Asian nations has been missing in our conversations for most of the time. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. What else is currents are coming that interest you? Do you see, you guys, you're looking at your work all the time and at the field. You're experts in this field. What do you see coming up? Anything else? Is circus the next thing?
I'm working on a new project.
All right.
I mean, we are still touring with Shadow, and just for information, we would love to come to your place with the performance. The new thing that we are doing is actually, I was thinking of what would be the next thing to do, and I think that we have two huge challenges right now. One is climate, and the other one is technology. And I know there are lots of other problems in the world. But these are the two ones that we want to say, like, minus is plus. I think I learned that in school. And if you can cross-fertilize the work with algorithms and computers and the climate problem, then you are having something which is really interesting. So what we want to do is a project called Paradise. We want to re-engineer our relation back to re-engineering our relation with nature. In this, because now there is a great possibility, because a lot of scientists are working with the language of nature, and we have lost our ability to talk with nature. And maybe some of you remember the Old Testimony, where God is sending the humans out of paradise with the words, and from now on you will never understand the language of nature. Which is very interesting, because this is what happens exactly at that time. It was a transition from hunter and collector to agriculture, and this is what the problem is today. So we want to make a reversed back in time to see what does the nature say, and there's a lot of data about that.
Okay, we're at 0.
So, can I just...
Unless they'll give us a couple more minutes. What do you want to say?
Yeah, two things. We have to also be aware that although we live in a global world, the concerns and occupation of parts of the world are not the same as the other. While, the Western world is looking at climate change and at technology as, the issues, which are important issues for the world, there is a big part of the world looking at a completely different scenario. Like for us, extremism, right-wing fascism mounting in the world is the biggest threat. The support, this is the biggest threat for us. We have poor internet, we can hardly have a Zoom across the world, so technology or AI threats are not there. And although climate is very important for us because our societies, our cities are heavily polluted, but political, oppressive, backward regimes are so much more our concerns than the climate right now, because that's what's killing us faster than the climate change. So I just wanted to say that. And one last thing, please, I would like to remind you that we should all ask for a ceasefire in Gaza. Peace cannot be reached by war. Peace can only be reached if we end apartheid, end occupation, and where we, all parties, put the radical extremists on the side and are able to sit down and find a reasonable solution. So we are the people who influence our societies, and we should continue to ask for a ceasefire until it's happened. Thank you. And peace.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Thanks for listening. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Thanks a lot.